we didn't even see this. You don't even see that. We're standing right here, and her Becky's friend turns around and says, "You know you're standing on a grave, because there's the headstone. Doesn't that look like somebody kind of like made that up just right?" Okay? So we're like, "Oh no." And then we started walking around, and we started seeing these things right here. Look at this. See, doesn't that look a little odd? There's a double rock standing up. Then we said, "Oh no," and then we started to see more rocks standing up. And everywhere you go, and they're all in twos. We're like, "Oh no, it might be an old pauper's grave. Who knows what it is?"
Cemetery.
Yes,
Cemetery.
that's exactly.
I mean, what beautiful place, where else would you find? It'd be beautiful to bury people, right? To lay them to rest. So we're freaking out. We're sure this is a grave. So we go back and do some research, and it wasn't on the plat. There was a grave here, but we found an old tax record, had a double cross up here on top of this hill. And
Really?
we're like, "Oh man, the best part of the whole property." And we're like, "Wow, this stinks." So we started doing some investigation, and we found that, you know what? The Cherokee Indians went on the Trail of Tears. Has anybody heard about the Trail of Tears, where they made a march from Georgia all the way to Oklahoma, and like 2/3 of them died of just the march and the physical toll on them? It started 3 miles down the road here, where the contract was signed in Pine Log. And you know, this is Pine Log Mountain that surrounds Lake Arrowhead, and there's a little community. So anyways, so we're freaking out. We're doing some investigation. It doesn't look like European graves, you know, no, they're not that kind of headstones or anything. And so we thought it was Indian graves. And finally, we did a lot of research, talked to the old timers around here, and they said, "Oh, this guy," and Becky, I don't even remember his name, he is an old timer around here, and he's very religious and everything, and he came up here with his divining rod. You know what a divining rod is? It's a stick or a coat hanger that has a Y in it. And he walks around like this, and if something, water or something special's in the ground, it magically pulls the stick to the ground. Like this.
Very scientific.
It's scientific, right?
Does it have to have some kind of material in the, like, is it just a stick or metal or?
I don't know, but he was one of them, okay?
Okay.
And apparently he knew what he was doing. He used a coat hanger is what we were told. Not a stick, but a coat hanger. And he said there were 3 bodies up on this hill under these graves. And so we're like, man, we can't buy this. And so we had to find out. Because once we found out a guy with a divining rod is the one that reported it and sent it to the tax office to record.
I called the tax guy and I said, "How did you determine there were graves?" And he said, "Jake McGarity used a divining rod." And I said, "Where are you from?"
I thought a divining rod was for wells, for water.
He said, "I'm from Massachusetts." And I said, "Well, you just got the job here, right?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you know what a divining rod is?" He goes, "No, but it sounded like a scientific instrument."
And we explained it to him, and he's like, "Oh my gosh." So
I can't believe I took his word and put it on the tax map.
So what we did is we called the Department of Natural Resources, because in Georgia they're the ones that are authorized to designate graves. And there's 5 archaeologists approved in Georgia to determine for the state if a grave has been found. So one of them lived right up here in Cherokee County, and we called him, and he came out, and he looked just like Indiana Jones, a beard.
$90 an hour.
$90 an hour, he was going to tell us what these were. He walked around on this hill for an hour, and one could say he wanted his $90, I don't know. But he walked around, but he looked at the trees, he looked all around. I mean, he really was observing the contour and what the tree makeup was and looking at these things. He took his compass out to see what direction they're oriented, because all graves, Indians, Native and European, always are north to west. You go to by any graveyard,
North
cemetery,
to west.
I'm sorry, east to west.
Yeah.
Always. With the what is it, the head facing east, so you see the rising sun. That's just the way they bury people. I didn't know that. So he did his compass, and he said none of these are oriented correctly. So I don't really know what they are. I don't know for sure what they are. And Becky looked at him. Oh, and then he went to his truck and he pulled out a 6-foot-long metal rod. And
to drive through the heart.
What that's about, right? You probe to see if the soil's softer in one place versus another, or what's under the ground.
So you'll know if something was buried there.
Okay.
Right. So he was very scientific.
Which was kind of creepy seeing
We're
this
like,
guy going around here.
Yeah, I asked him if he was going to disturb the spirits, and he said, "Trust me, they're okay with this." So he probed all these things, but it wouldn't go in very far. It didn't work very well. And finally he came back after about an hour and a half, and it was in July, 100 degrees it seemed like. We were sweating like crazy. He says, I don't think these are graves. They just don't seem like they have the right characteristics. They're not oriented right. I can't probe down in them. And Becky looked at him and said, so what does it take to know if 100% what they are?
I said, I want a yes or no, not
We
a
want a
maybe.
yes or no. He says, and he looked at it and says, well, then you have to dig them up. And Becky looked at him and says, do you dig them up? He says, yes, for $90 an hour. And so Becky said, do you have your tools with you? He said, yes. And we said, start digging. So he didn't just dig though. He got out a piece of graph paper and he drew everything out up here in the orientation, in the graves. And he proceeded to dig a 2 foot wide by 1 foot wide deep, perpendicular to all the potential suspected graves. And he dug them across, and it was 100 degrees. He's sweating and digging this stuff up, and as he was digging, just big rocks were coming out and all this. And then he went way over there and dug a hole as a sample hole of where he knew wasn't disturbed ever. And he brought the dirt over and he set it down next to all these sample perpendicular digs, and he said, this dirt has never been dug up before.
How deep did he go?
About a foot. But it never changed colors. There was no end, start or end of where dirt had been disturbed, and there were native, just rocks all in it. So to wind the story up, we sent when we put the offer in, we sent a letter saying that there's potential graves on this property, and it really, really ruins the value of, almost over half of it. And Becky wrote it, and you have to read it. It's like her piece of artwork.
Sounds like an Adam thing.
And anyways, net is we got paid a lot less for the property. And the guy the archaeologist wrote it up, official letterhead, that these aren't graves.
Take it off the
tax map. We got it off the tax map, and we got the property for a lot less.
But
wow.
We did hike further into the woods, and you see how much rock is in this back part of the property. He said it's layered rock, and he told us the name of it, and that the tree roots grow down through the layers, and then when there's a storm and a tree falls over, it pulls the rocks upright, and that's why you'll see several little rocks together upright.
And there's, we're not going to walk down there, but if you walk down there to some trees that have fallen over in the last 50 years where it's kind of rotting out, and you can see where it's pulled up, there's rocks standing on the end, all in the roots.
Wow.
He said probably 200 years ago, 500 years ago, a tornado came through here, knocked all the trees over the same way, so that's why they're all oriented kind of the same direction, right, a bit. And he said, but all the evidence is gone of the trees because they brought it away and the weather down and they're all covered up. But the rocks are sticking up.
Wow.
He was quite disappointed that he didn't find a new grave.
He actually said that might have been marking the schoolhouse. We did history and found there was a little one-room schoolhouse on the property somewhere back in this area, and he said a lot of times they would put a monument like.
And this is the only flat area, so maybe it's the old school marker, but we don't know.
Yeah, so there's no grave.
So there's no grave, but it makes a great story. So you can run around and go,